Today I'm keeping my promise to you guys, which you probably don't recall, but I'm going to go over the rest of the books that I read in 2011. This might be put in 2 parts, 3 parts, 4 parts, 1 part, I don't know. Some books I'm only going to say a couple words, some I'm going to go more in detail and gush and probably tell you nothing that you actually really need to know about the book, but that's how helpful I am. So starting off, William Shakespeare's As You Like It, and I liked it, more than liked it. Next was Conrad's Fate. Now, I got this book so many years ago when I was a kid, and I never read it for some odd reason, I don't know, and I absolutely loved it. I fell in love. It's a kid's book, but who cares, because a good book is just a good book, no matter what age it was intended to. It was just so good, and it's so magical, and it's fantasy. There's a whole bunch that kind of relate to this story. And you don't really need to know any of the background of the stories because it kind of describes it in each story. I assume stands alone because this is just a random one in the series. And I want to read more of these. The author also wrote Howl's Moving Castle, if you're familiar with that, the film or the book. I haven't read or watched either, but I have been meaning to for a really long time. So it was so good. You should really read this. It was just so magically brilliant fun. Next, I read the entire Harry Potter series before Deathly Hallows Part 2, and obviously they were amazing, like they are. I don't reread many books, and I probably read the Philosopher's Stone a couple of times. In the other Harry Potter series, I have read the last chapters of all except Deathly Hallows, and I haven't really reread them, and I love them, and it was just so great. And the reason I don't reread books is because I have this mental ever-growing list in my head of books I want to read, and if I reread a book, then my list is going to get longer. But this year I actually reread a couple of books, and I was so young when I first started reading Harry Potter, and I think you always get something new from a book. But I think I just understood and really just loved and appreciated these way more probably than I was when I was younger, or I don't know. They took on a whole new life, and as you probably all know, because most of you probably love Harry Potter as well, these books are amazing, and I don't need to say anything else. Next, I read It's Kind of a Funny Story, and I wanted to read this before I knew there was a movie, and then I saw the trailer of the movie and that looks so good, and I actually ended up watching the movie first before I read it. I liked the movie. It wasn't what I expected or thought, and I liked the book. It took me a little getting into it just because I didn't love it at first, but when I got to the end, I loved this book. It's about this teenager, Craig, that checks himself into a hospital because he tried to kill himself, and he's had these thoughts before. And I think it's just an important book for people to read, just because, you know, it's a thing that happens, and I just really ended up loving this more than I thought. Next was Deadly Lies by Laurie Stolarz. She wrote this other series that I'm in love with, and I will probably make a vlog sometime about her. This is another series, the Touch series it's called, that she wrote, and it's the second book, and I read the first one and it was good, and the second one is good too. It's not as good as her other series. Never got as into it, but there's also 2 others, and I'm going to read them, and I really love her as an author. Next, I read, in 2011, I was a bit on a Mark Twain kick because I never read Mark Twain before, so I read Adventures of Huckleberry Finn, and a really good book. Next, I read the Grucho letters, which is letters from and to Grucho Marx. And this book, I love the Marx brothers. They are just so funny. I saw this in a used bookstore. I'm like, I have to buy it. And it's good to not read it all at once, I found, just personally, because it gets a little bit tiring, and I just needed a break from it. But it's so funny, it's so humorous, just himself, and you see it in his letters. So if you're a fan of the Marx Brothers, then definitely, and if you don't know who the Marx Brothers are, go watch their movies because they are brilliant. Next book I read was Geektastic Stories from the Nerd Herd, and it was just so cute and funny, and it was a great way to kind of like read a whole bunch of young adult authors and just see which ones you gravitated towards. And John Green has a story in there, and Scott Westerfeld has a story, and a whole bunch of other authors that I can't remember at this time have their stories in there. The next book I read was Laura Ingalls, her biography, and I am named after Laura Ingalls, and my mom hates that I have only read the first or maybe also the second of the Little House series, and that I don't want to read her books. I like them, I read them when I was little, and I just wasn't compelled to read the others. There was nothing wrong with them. But I read her biography, and she was just this amazing woman. She was so strong, so brave, and I am glad and proud that I'm named after her. And I have yet to read the rest of the Little House series, but also just reading about her and her life. I'm only named after her, but she was a novelist, obviously, and she was also a journalist later in life, and it was just things that she did in her life that I hope to one day accomplish. And if I'm just half of the woman she is, I would be happy with that, because she's just this amazing woman. And yeah, so it was just kind of cool reading about her and just being named after her and seeing these similarities kind of pop up, or things that I want to accomplish pop up.